Hello everyone, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel. I'm only 20 minutes late because of the proverbial technical difficulties, and I'm gonna try something today, but I'm not sure whether it's gonna work or not. I really do owe it to you guys to get more technically proficient with this stuff. But what I'm going to try to do is a screen share so that you don't have to be watching this face all of the time that we're on this afternoon. And some of you I know will be asking, well, where the heck is Carlos, right? But Carlos is being a dutiful son. He is here home in Miami, but he's with his parents because he has to be with me this evening. Because some of you might know that we're doing another I Love Jeet Kune workshop at the gym where I run my classes. So actually, that's one of the reasons why we are a little bit strapped for time today, because I have to do this broadcast with you guys, and then I got to get out of here and teach the junior JKD class. Then we do the workshop, and then the workshop will be integrated into the adult Jeet Kune class. So last time we were on, I had mentioned that we would do something about we would talk about Way of the Dragon. And when we finished the broadcast, I realized that I hadn't talked about it at all. And the reason why it came up is because as all the I Love Jeet Kune members know, we put up different photographs of Bruce Lee and what have you as a means of both entertainment, and then in some cases when I put stuff up, it's also education. So I think there was a rapper one time who coined the term edutainment or what have you. And this is something that Carlos and I talk about all the time, because my instinct as a Jeet Kune instructor is to always put something out there that kind of asks a question that is designed to make people think. I mean, after all, this personality named Bruce Lee that so many of us admire and respect and follow to this day is someone who constantly challenged his followers. As Linda Lee Codwell has said, you know, he was a self-educated man. And so when you were involved in self-education, a lot of times you're probably asking yourself a whole lot of questions and then coming up with the answers on your own and what have you. So among the purposes here at I Love Jeet Kune, it's to, yes, entertain you, but also this Jeet Kune thing is is one of the greatest things that's come down the pike in the years that people can use as a vehicle for personal growth and development. So, just bear with me if from time to time what I'm doing is asking you a question about a photograph or something as a way of increasing your store of knowledge in the Jeet Kune world, right? So the experiment for today is to try to share my screen with you, because what I planned for now, if this explodes, I'll talk a little bit more and then I'll probably cut this short, right? If this doesn't work, but the idea is to share with you some video clips from the Way of the Dragon film, and then just kind of discuss them, so to speak. So what I'm looking for here, and if anybody knows where it is, feel free to tell. I'm looking for the setting that says share your screen. I know where it is. I think I know where it is on the phone, but I'm not sure where it is on the laptop. So if anybody knows where it is on the laptop, save me while I look like a complete fool here. I really should have looked this up before. Carlos, do you know where to find it on the, because I know Carlos is watching, do you know where to find the share the screen button? Just type it into the comments or something. I should be able to see it. Or Harold, if you know where it is, because my old student minister Harold Hankerson, I think he's watching also. Let's see. Nope, I don't see it here. I apologize. I really should have checked this before we did this. Hey Cameron, how you doing? Well, while I talk, if anybody comes online and you know how to, as a matter of fact, let me just type this in here. And then we'll just redo this later this week. Or Harold says it's not on the laptop. So if it's not on the laptop, then I guess that's pretty much it. All right, so we'll talk about it then. Let's do this. This is going to be tough, except for those who have active imaginations. But one reason why this whole thing came about was because I have a tremendous collection of Jeet Kune photographs, and there was a photo project that I was working on, and I just kept seeing how much work went into, let's say, for example, Enter the Dragon, right? Okay, although that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Way of the Dragon. But as I was looking through these photographs from the different films, I realized that, and I remembered and realized that Way of the Dragon, Bruce Lee was a producer on that, co-produced it with Raymond Chow. He was the screenwriter for it. He was also the director, and he was the male lead, and he was the fight choreographer. So that's 5 things, right, that Bruce Lee was responsible for in the production of Way of the Dragon. Well, I mean, I know what's his name? What's his name? Clint Eastwood, for example. Clint Eastwood is an actor who has gone behind the camera and done his work there. But then I think he has done a couple of films where he's both behind the camera and in front of the camera. But Bruce Lee played 5 roles in Way of the Dragon. And yeah, I agree with you, Carlos. That makes him quite the entrepreneur, right? So I'm really annoyed that I didn't know that you couldn't share from the laptop. I tell you, I'm so old school. I still believe in my laptop more than I believe in my phone. All right, but we'll work through this, and I might have a workaround for it. Okay, so So we were talking about the 5 roles that Bruce Lee played in Way of the Dragon. Now, for those of you who can remember, the storyline is he's the proverbial Chinese country bumpkin who comes to the big city, but it's not even like somebody from the country in China comes to the big city in China, right? This is a guy who comes from China all the way over to Italy, right, to help out some of his family members who are running afoul of the hoodlum element in Rome. So, and this, I believe, somebody can research this for me and tell me whether or not I'm right. I believe this was the first Chinese kung fu film that was moved to a foreign country, right? And filmed partially in a foreign country. So that in and of itself is a remarkable endeavor. And this is what, 1971 or 72. So we've got a Chinese movie company making its way over to Italy to film a kung fu film, right? I don't think that had been done before, right? So there's, depending on which version of the movie you've seen, there's an extended sequence when he gets off the plane and he's waiting for them to come pick him up, and then but nobody comes to pick him up, so then he's hungry, so he goes to the restaurant, and then there are a few incidents that occur inside the restaurant. And my understanding is that what Bruce Lee was attempting to indicate there is a number of things. One, there was the whole stranger in a foreign land element, but then it was also simultaneously trying to show that even though people on the externalities are different, right? Everybody gets hungry, everybody's got to eat, right? And then he tried to make fun of the language barriers and all that kind of stuff. So some of it is a little bit hokey. I mean, if you're watching that movie now, that's a movie that was filmed over 40 years ago, maybe even 45 years ago. So it's not going to be the most exciting thing for us, right? But if you can put yourself in the mindset of somebody watching this in the 1970s, right? Some of you weren't around, so you might not be able to do that. Then there are people like me, older than dust, who right? So there are those scenes, and then they pick him up, and then everything starts to build from there on, because we know that he's going to fight, right? But there's a certain artistry in the way that that Bruce Lee attempted in writing this film to stretch things out until, because everybody goes to a kung fu film to watch the fighting. So, but there's a certain artistry in the way that he stretches things out before there is any kind of a kung fu action. And the way he introduces that to us, I think when they've explained to him the problem at the restaurant with the hoodlums, and that there's no, there's very little work to do. So there's a scene behind the restaurant where I think it's Ayung says to him, they've got no work to do, so that's why the guys took up practicing karate, as they call it, for self-defense against the thugs. And in this sequence, Bruce Lee talks about, it's really cool, because this is where he is able to impart both kung fu teachings, the physical aspects, but also, let's call it the philosophical aspects of, and his approach to martial art. Because he says to the Chinese guy, because this is what the guy says, he says they all took up practice in Japanese karate. He says, well, what about you? And the guy says, no, it's foreign, right? And then Bruce Lee says, well, foreign or not, if it can help you to defend yourself, right, in a fight, then you should practice it. And he says to him, you should realize that, right? So then the guy says, well, my thing is Chinese boxing. And he says, well, you know Chinese boxing? And Bruce is like, yeah, of course I know Chinese boxing. So then the guys finish practicing their kata or what have you. And then they come over and they size him up, and they're like, well, he doesn't look like much of anything. And then they said, well, we've heard that Chinese boxing lacks any real power, right? And that's when Bruce Lee does the famous, well, you only lack power when you're a beginner. And he says, well, how do you learn to do it? And that's when he goes like this, and he goes, you got to learn to put your hip into it, right? So the guy says, well, show us how you put your hip into it. And he says, and it's really cool, because again, you have to remember that he directed this film also. So that means that he's in charge of what the camera does, right, to a certain degree. And there's a complete change of aspect on his face he becomes like ultra serious because now they're talking about his thing, Chinese boxing. And he says, well, you'll get hurt. And they're like, nah, you can't really hurt us. And then the guy says, what does he say? They're all wearing at least some kind of protective padding, right? Okay, but I think that's like a mistranslation or whatever from the Mandarin or the Cantonese that it might have been filmed in, because they're not wearing any padding. But what they do have is like they have one of the old one of the air tube kick shields, and then they have the football forearm shield, and then what's the other? Then they have a little square target, right? So so then they go, and he's like, okay, so he'll show him some stuff. So then he forearm smashes the guy with the shield, and then he kind of does a little back fist on the square target, and then I think the camera zooms in, and you see that thing come over his face again. And then he stops the action because the uncle character, the chef at the restaurant, comes out and he says, whoa, 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 we got customers, right? So here there was the build-up, and now everybody's like, yeah, now we're going to get to see some action, and then that proverbial rug is pulled out from under us. So now we're caught up, right? And if those of you who are hearing this, whether you're watching it live or if when you see this, you'll understand that as a technique that's used in multiple industries, right? But if anybody is like if you're writing a novel, that's a technique that you'll use. If you're writing, let's say a sales letter, right? If you're writing some kind of advertisement or what have you, there is that idea of the build-up, and then there's the expected, what do you call it? The expected reward. But then the technique is to keep you in suspended animation, because that reward that you thought you were going to get, now we take it away from you. So now you're gonna be even more invested in watching the movie, right? So okay, so I'm talking a lot. Oh, and by the way, I'll tangent off on this. I posted earlier. Hey Kevin, how you doing? Kevin Siemens on. I posted earlier this morning 2 pictures, kind of in preparation for what we're doing now. 2 pictures from Way of the Dragon. And I asked a question about them, but again, of course, I may have posted them in like the incorrect section of the I Love Jeet Kune page. So if Carlos, if you can take a look at that and see if I need to move it from one section to the other, but it's a thing about 2 pictures. Anyhow, so back to Way of the Dragon. So now the first actual action scene, if I have this in chronological order, is when the thugs show up, and this is the one with the black guy with the famous Chinese spare ribs, right, where he lifts the guy's elbow up and then he smashes him in the ribs. So then they end up in the backyard again, and then Unicorn Chan, who some of you probably know in real life was one of Bruce Lee's good friends, childhood friends, right? He's the one who goes to fight the big fat Italian guy, and the big fat Italian guy just lays him out with a right cross, wham. So then the second Chinese guy moves in, and that's when Bruce Lee sticks his arm out, and it's all classic, and the music is great, and what have you. And now it's like, we'll show them Chinese boxing. And that's where it starts. And then there's the spectacular. And I think we've talked about this on the broadcast before. But what's interesting about this is that here's what Bruce Lee does, right? Now we all know that Bruce Lee was, for lack of a different expression, non-classical. I was going to say anti, but I don't want to say that, right? Non-classical and non-traditional. However, for some reason, in this particular sequence, and again, maybe it's just a translation thing, he does a fancy almost like a kata thing, like maybe something from Tam Toi, right? Spring and leg exercise or what have you. And then he's got a really flowery stance where he does the, thing with the palm. And then the fat guy comes up, and then he hook kicks him in the back, right? And then he calls it movement number 4, dragon seeks its path, right? And then he does the spin and reverse hook. Now that's the thing. I don't know how many times I've watched that. It's like the Pak Sao Gua Choi, right? Pak Da Gua Choi in Enter the Dragon against Bob Wall. You can watch it as many times as you want to watch it. You can slow it down and you still probably are not going to see what the heck happens. So when he does this spin and reverse hook, I've watched it in slow motion and I swear he really did kick that guy on the side of the head. He had to. I mean, there's dust that flies and everything, but maybe that's just a cinematic trick that I don't know anything about. Anyhow, it's a fantastic kick, fantastic action scene, and that lays so it's like instant karma, right? Because the Italian guy just laid out the Chinese guy, and now 2 seconds later, a Chinese guy lays out the Italian guy. And then the black guy shows up. So they changed the music. So they've got the funky jazz hi-hat thing happening, right? And then the guy comes up and he's doing his best Muhammad Ali impersonation, right? And so he fires off the punch at Bruce Lee, and then Bruce Lee moves away. No, I think he moves this direction, right? He moves away from it. And then next thing you know, he comes up, wham, right? And does like a whip and jab or something over this guy's hand, right? And then grabs him and does like a front leg sweep, right? And then hits him on the ground, and that's it. That is how we roll. Yes, Harold. Right. So, except he was on the wrong end of the fight, man. Right? Okay. So then he sits on top of this guy, and then 2 guys move in, and he takes them out both with like leg trapping or foot trapping or what have you. It's not as sophisticated as something that we might see in today's choreography, but it is kind of ahead of its time, even for back in the early 70s, right? Okay, so then he does that. He throws them down, and then he does the side kick on the blonde cat. And this is another thing that some of you might when we're done here, we might you might just go take a look at it. But I swear to you, when he does the slide and kick on this guy, so this guy, if I remember it correctly, right? I'm scared now to do anything on the laptop in case I like break a connection or something. So I keep promising that one day I'll do post-production and stuff and insert video into it, but I think I will have to do it. Harold's making me laugh with his comments, right? I think I will have to do it for this, but when so somebody named Julian says the movie was pathetic. Yeah. Well, like they say, everybody's entitled to their opinion, right? So I'm sure Julian's got a good reason for having that opinion. So what I was trying to tell you, let me get this out, is that if you take a look at that sequence, when he slides and kicks this guy, his left foot lands right outside this guy's lead foot. So his rear foot lands right outside this guy's lead foot. And it is an incredible, right? Incredible side kick. And then he does, I think it's like another reverse hook on the second guy. And then that fight scene's over. So now, everybody in the cinema, all the Chinese waiters and the female lead, Nora Mao, right, are now summarily impressed with the country bumpkin's ability, right? Because now he's kicking butt, right? So so now the story starts developing, and of course, there's got to be a romantic element, right? I mean, because after all, that's like a necessary part of life and what have you. So then there's scenes and sequences that depict how Nora Mao is starting to fall for him and what have you, right? Okay, but you can watch that on your own. We're more interested in the fight and stuff. So then the next fight scene is as in terms of what we're doing here, because I think there's other stuff that happens, is when actually this one I didn't review. All right, so let me see if I can remember. So there's that one. This is not a fight scene, but this is. So remember, I told you that the Unicorn Chan, he gets knocked out. So then there's a scene the next day where everybody's like, "You were so fast yesterday, we didn't see what you did." And then he's yeah. Let's see if the great master can do it again. All right. So now they go back. They go into the backyard again. And this is the one where Cedro Bruce does, from what the way I see it, it's a rear leg, right? It's a rear leg hook kick or a rear leg round kick. And this is another one of those things where I'm amazed at Bruce Lee's body mechanics, because when we started Muay Thai in the 1980s, if any of you out there have ever seen it, Kevin Seaman, if he's still watching, Kevin will know what I'm talking about. It's I'm pretty sure it's Ajahn Chai Surasute's 1982 Muay Thai instructional video, and that's where a whole bunch of us were introduced to the idea in Muay Thai. And Minister Harold will remember, and Carlos will remember, that this is something that I always made a point of teaching, is that if you're in left lead, when you do that right round kick, this left hand has this little circular motion to it. Ajahn Chai in the old days was very, 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 very big on making sure that was part of your mechanics. Bruce Lee does almost identical the same thing. The motion that his left arm goes through is exactly what we were taught to perform in early Muay Thai, right? So to me that's amazing, right? Might not be to anybody else. So he does the rear round kick on the first guy, and then he sets up for the lead side kick on the second guy. And that's the scene that everybody knows, because it's probably been watched, I don't know, hundreds of millions of times, right, over the year. And this is the one where he knocks the guy literally off his feet into, and then they've got the pad set up, with the big cardboard boxes and what have you, right? And so now it's confirmed for us, because in the first scene they teased us with it. Now in the second scene, sticking around and paying attention has paid off, because now we see this kid really knows what the heck he's doing, right? Okay, so then the scene after that is when the Italian thugs come back, and that's when the nunchaku thing happens. But I didn't intend to talk about that one. What I wanted to do was to talk about the Chuck Norris fight scene, because that's the one, right, that everybody loves. And if I didn't talk about that one, you'd probably kill me, and we can't have that, because like I told you earlier, I got to get out of here as soon as possible and go teach classes in the workshop today, right? So the Chuck Norris fight scene, there's a whole build up to that, because they're in the Coliseum. They shot the external scenes in the Coliseum, and so there's like the chase scene and whatever before finally they meet up with each other, and then there's the warm up sequence, And this is where I'll do one of my favorite things, which is to pick on Joe Rogan. So in the podcast in the podcast where Joe Rogan and Joey Diaz were talking about this, right? Joe makes the comment they're doing kata to warm up, and y'all know me. I'm a little bit OCD, right? So when Joe said that, I go wrong again, because Chuck Norris is doing kata. Bruce Lee is not. Bruce Lee is actually doing a portion of what we call at Unified Martial Art the Bruce Lee 6-minute warm up, right? It's a thing where he does jump rope for a minute, then he does let me see if I have the sequence right. He does jump rope for a minute, then he does the stand-in body fold, the back bend and the forward fold for a minute. Then it's what we call in combat conditioning the Hindu push-up, right? So that's 3 minutes. Then it's the body weight squat for another minute. I'm sorry. Then it's jumping jacks for a minute, and then it is the alternating front kick leg swing. So that's what we call the 6-minute warm up. And so he does portions of that. But Chuck Norris is off on the other side doing the kata. And so that's another one of those messages, let's say, right, that Bruce Lee injects into his movies. And then the fight starts. And again, some of you may have read or heard where, when asked about some of what was being depicted in that fight sequence, Bruce Lee said that some of what he was doing was showing how his adherence to, he didn't say classical rhythm, maybe he said a fixed rhythm. That's why he was in the beginning stages on the losing end, right? And if you look at it, you'll see what I'm talking about. As a matter of fact, I'll insert it into, I can't insert it into the Facebook video, but when I insert it into the YouTube video, like I keep promising, I'll send all you guys a link for it. The reason why they're on the same rhythm is because everybody does a series of 3 kicks. Whoever starts, maybe Bruce Lee starts, then he does 3, then Chuck Norris does 3, then he does 3, and then Chuck Norris reads his rhythm and timing, and that's when he does the spin reverse hook, and he scores the first hit, right, and knocks Bruce Lee down. And that's when things change, because then he gets up, and now he starts using what we call the rocker shuffle. And now he's going to broken timing. So whereas before, they were making use of not even attack by combination, because the 3 kicks, well, yeah, maybe you could call that ABC, but I tend to look at that as just 3 single attacks repeated, as opposed to attack by combination. You see? So, but that's not an important point. So now he starts using distant, progressive indirect attack, true attack by combination, because it's not the same attack every time, right? And it's fascinating, and people watch it, and different people get different things from it. The guy who said that that the movie was pathetic, he probably thinks that it sucks as a fight scene compared to, let's see, maybe what Uma Thurman does in Kill Bill. Yeah, he probably thinks that Uma Thurman's martial arts skill is way higher than Bruce Lee's. Maybe, who knows? Yeah. So then there's this whole thing. That this is the scene. This is the fight scene where he uses the oblique kick, for example, as progressive indirect attack, because he uses that, hit low, and then feint low, and then the high hook kick to the head, and it goes on. And then the other element that's in there is the way they use the is the way they use the camera, where when he does, and this is the other thing. So anybody who's live with me right now, feel free to chime in on this. I still don't know what it is he does when Chuck Norris is up against the wall, right? And he whacks him and he whacks him and he whacks him. And then Chuck Norris goes to hit, and then he hits him in the arm, right? Now, by Kali standards, it looks like it might be some kind of a gunting, right? Which is like the nerve destruction or what have you. But I can't swear to that. But he definitely does something to his arm. Or maybe it's a Wing Chun, well, this is Toksao. So maybe it's a Wing Chun technique, or I don't know, right? If anybody does, feel free to tell me, right? And a somersault flip kick. Okay, I'm getting distracted. Sorry. Right. So he hits him in the arm, and then he takes out the knee, and Chuck Norris falls down. And then there's camera sequences there where they don't speak to each other, but everybody gets the message. Bruce Lee is trying to tell him, look, man, you're beat. Take it easy, right? We can end it here. And Chuck Norris is like, no, we're both warriors, and one of us is going to walk out of here and the other one is going to be carried out, right? And so Chuck Norris makes his last-ditch effort and ends up in a guillotine, right? And again, anybody who's listened to me, we always make fun of Joe Rogan on this, because Joe Rogan says, he catches him in a guillotine, right? And he says, yeah, but I don't know if it's an over-under or if he's whatever, right? But you can only pull that off if you've got a strong squeeze. And any of us who are die-hard Bruce Lee, I almost said Bruce Lee students. And, there's going to be somebody who says, oh, Dwight Woods called himself a Bruce Lee student. Hello, my teacher is Dan Inosanto, right? So I could be considered, second generation Bruce Lee student or whatever, but I'd never refer to myself as a Bruce Lee student. Anyhow, all right. We know that there was, among the many pieces of equipment, the many contraptions that were constructed for Bruce Lee, there was a thing with a big spring in it that was designed to increase the strength in your choke or in your neck squeeze, right? So that's the Chuck Norris fight scene. And then at the very end, Bruce Lee turns to walk off, and then okay, all right. So I got two comments on what might have happened there. Okay, so thanks very much, Kurt and Graja. All right. Okay, I'll take a look at it, but thanks, guys. That gives me a better idea. So at this final end, Bruce Lee turns to walk away, and then out of respect, he goes back and he picks up Chuck Norris's gi top and his black belt, and he goes and he covers the body and he puts the belt on it, and then he yells out or something, and then the scene fades, right? So that's what I wanted to point out to people today. I don't know if I did a really good job of describing that or what have you. It would have been much better with the video sequences. We're going to have to talk to Facebook about sharing screens I'll have to talk to Facebook about sharing screens, because this is something that I'd love to do with you guys more and more often, which is to break down the philosophies of Jeet Kune that are evident right there in the movies that Bruce Lee delivered to us, even if you have to go looking for them, right? Because again, this is a thing that this Jeet Kune is a thing that we talk about it probably every week, and we'll continue to talk about it, of course, is that because Bruce Lee left us with a process and not a product. Hey, Sifu Nick, what's happening? How are you? Because Bruce Lee left us with a process and not a product, everything's subject to interpretation or misinterpretation. Everything's subject to ridicule. Everything's subject to different opinions and what have you. So, for example, we had a little commentary back and forth last week about Dan Inosanto, Taki Kimura, and James Lee, and so there was confusion on some people's part about who was senior to whom, and so that's something that there's more than one way of looking at it. If we look at it in chronological order, then Jesse Glover is senior to everybody, all right? Because all reports indicate that he was Bruce Lee's first student in Seattle. So he'd be senior even to Taki Kimura, right? But in terms of rank, Taki Kimura was the one given, I think it was third rank. Hang on a second. I might be able to pull that up right here. Even if, see, this is what I wanted to be able to do with you guys, is whatever I see on my screen that you could see. Sifu Nick, you're a technical guy. Do you know if when we do, just put it in the comment for me, when we do this live stuff, can I, from my laptop, share my desktop on Facebook without losing the connection? Because some people have said that it can be done through the phone. So whatever I have on the phone, I can do, but I can't do it on the laptop. Do you know if that's true? So what I'm looking at here is James Lee, not Taki Kimura's, but James Lee's certificate, dated. Bruce Lee might have written this the old British way like we used to. So this might be the 3rd of April in 1964. And James Lee was awarded third rank but his certificate is okay, got it, Sifu Nick, thanks much. His certificate is a Junfan Kung Fu Institute certificate, right? And that's important, because I think Taki Kimura's certificate is also a Junfan Kung Fu Institute certificate. And so that is in terms of seniority then in Jeet Kune Do, then Dan Inosanto would outrank those two, because Dan Inosanto was awarded certificates in Junfan Kung Fu, in the Tao of Chinese Kung Fu, and then also in Jeet Kune Do. Whereas James Lee and Taki Kimura, to the best of my knowledge, the best of my understanding, were not awarded certificates in Jeet Kune Do. And it didn't have anything to do with skill, necessarily skill level or what have you. It probably had to do, because Bruce Lee himself even remarked that that Dan Inosanto had less training than Taki Kimura and James Lee, but that he met him during what Cedar Bruce called the midst of his evolution. And so I think the indication there was that Sifu Inosanto was more steeped in what Bruce Lee would call the pathless path, whereas James Lee and Taki Kimura before him would have been more steeped in more of the non-classical Wing Chun or non-classical Chinese Kung Fu approach. So again, that's a small point, but it is one of those things where people out there in the JKD world are misinformed or underinformed or uninformed in some instances, right? I saw something just before I came on the broadcast, and I'll probably do something with this also, because how should I put this? Because I want to be politically correct, right? People who refer to themselves as JKD people, right? Especially if you are some kind of a certified instructor or what have you, then you should know better. And you shouldn't be out there saying, or this is just my personal opinion, right? You shouldn't be out there saying or doing the same thing, making the same mistakes that someone who is not deep into Jeet Kune makes. So in other words, and I'll put this up sometime later, there's a picture of Bruce Lee, an infamous, a pretty well-known picture of Bruce Lee, and it's touted as being the picture of Bruce Lee with his first Seattle student, Jesse Glover. Now I'm going to say something ridiculous, right? Now I know that all us black people look the same. I'm just kidding. I couldn't resist, right? But it's not Jesse Glover. It's now I'm going to embarrass myself. It's a guy named Joseph Hayes, and Joseph Hayes was one of the top Taekwondo competitors back in the day, and I believe the picture itself is something from one of the several Taekwondo tournaments that maybe Bruce Lee attended with, that was hosted by his good friend Grandmaster Jun Rhee. And so it's a picture of Joseph Hayes and Bruce Lee. And there are Jeet Kune people. This is what I saw before I came on the broadcast. There are Jeet Kune people out there who just take that off the internet and put it on Facebook in an effort to indicate to people that they know stuff about Jeet Kune, and it's dead wrong, right? And that's something that irritates the heck out of me. Don't say stuff and don't make claims about yourself and about Jeet Kune before you've done your research, right? It's something that I've learned from people that I follow in, we'll call it, other than martial arts, right? In other areas of human endeavor. Okay. Anyhow, right? So yeah, have evidence for claims that you make. If you don't know what you're talking about, have the courage to admit that you don't know what you're talking about, and just tell people, look, I can't comment on that because I don't know for myself, and I haven't done the research, but check with me later, and I'll get back to it. That's how I try to run everything that I do, right? So this is broadcast number 7, I believe, if we're counting these correctly, right? Again, I apologize, but Sifu Nick, thanks for sending me that thing about the screen sharing. I thought that by now Facebook would have had, where you didn't have to go to a third party to be able to do stuff like that. Maybe if I give them a couple of weeks, they'll know. Or maybe if you talk to them, because you're a scary guy. All right. So I hope you guys got something out of this. We will do this again, breaking down different Bruce Lee's different movies. Won't take very long because there were not that many movies. Any other ideas for topics of discussion that you guys want, feel free to message them to me, put them in the comments. I read the comments as much as I can. I don't get to everybody. Yeah, we can do that probably on Friday, Sifu Nick. I'll probably have time on Friday, but I'll talk to you about that personally. And yeah, right. Carlos and I have high hopes for what we're doing here at I Love Jeet Kune. We really appreciate all of the engagement that you guys participate in. I'm pissed at him because he always gets more engagement with the post that he puts up, right? And it'll just he'll just wake up and think about something, and he'll put it up Whereas I'll wake up, I'll think about something, then I'll think about it some more, then I'll think about it some more, and then I'll start putting it together. And then by the time I put it up, he's got, you know, like 3,000 people have taken a look at it and said, oh, this is like the coolest thing that I've ever seen. And then I put mine up, and you got to blow it up and read it and see what it says and this and this. And he gives me a hard time about that. But, you know, like I said at the beginning, my thing is to spread not just more and more images of Bruce Lee. We've seen those for decades. My quest, one of my goals is to spread. If I had to encapsulate it into one thing, it'd be this. And I said this earlier. Linda Lee Codwell said that her husband was that her husband was a self-educated man. And if a self-educated man becomes the object of admiration and respect and honor for millions of people across the world, then that tells you that education, even if it is self-education, is probably one of the most important things. So as a Jeet Kune Do teacher, as a Jeet Kune Do instructor, that's always going to be part of what I'm trying to do, which is to increase people's knowledge about Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do, because in doing so, I help them to increase knowledge about themselves. So this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. We will do this again next Wednesday. Carlos will probably be out of Miami by then, and maybe I can talk him into joining me on that one. Again, any suggestions, any ideas for what it is that you'd like us to discuss, you guys feel free to message that to me, and I'll see you in 7 days. Everybody take care.